call the Kitty Hawk Town Council to order December the 2nd, 2013, Kitty Hawk Town Hall at 6 p.m. I want to welcome everybody out tonight. Looks like we've done something terrible because we got a room full. But I'd ask you to join me in a moment of silence and pledge of allegiance. Next is the approval of the agenda. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
A second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, next is oath of offices. Mayor-elect Gary Perry.
I state your name. Do swear that I will well and truly execute the duties of mayor for the town of Kitty Hawk according to the best of my skill and authority, according to the law, so help me God. I do solemnly swear that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of mayor for the town of Kitty Hawk, so help me God.
And next on the agenda is Council-elect Craig Garris. Please step forward.
Mayor and Jeff Pruitt, we're going to do them together.
Are we going to do them together?
Yes.
All right, and Jeff Pruitt. See how quick you got bumped out?
I don't feel like nothing changed yet.
I state your name. Do swear that I will well and truly execute the duties of councilman for the town of Kitty Hawk according to the best of my skill and authority, according to the law, so help me God. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of councilman for the town of Kitty Hawk, so help me God. Thank you.
And next, we'll have some resolutions of appreciation and remarks from Richard Reed and to Richard and Clifton. Richard? You want to sit there, or you want to come up here?
Wants to hide.
Come
Do
on
it by
up here.
Richard.
I like to hide behind the table.
Richard, as most folks have known by now, has been a planner before he became an elected representative. And Richard, I'd like, before I read this resolution of appreciation, to tell you that your experience in the planning department has helped me understand some of the things that we do up here. In particular, why do we have a zoning that's different in one place than another, and the rationale behind that. And I think that helped me more than, I can read the rule book, what the understanding behind it was the helpful part to me. So it made sense why we were doing something. So, in appreciation for your service to the town, a resolution of appreciation to Richard M. Reed. Whereas Richard M. Reed has served as a council member for 8 years for the town of Kitty Hawk from 2005 to 2013. And whereas he also served as planner for the town of Kitty Hawk for 11 years from 1993 to 2004. And whereas his professional credentials and extensive planning experience enhance the town's council's effectiveness in analyzing and deciding planning issues. And whereas his knowledge of the town's properties and evolution of Kitty Hawk planning and zoning code offered a valuable historic perspective for town council deliberations. And whereas he provided input to council planning decisions regarding citizen concerns and potential impacts previously identified during his participation in the 1994 update of Kitty Hawk CAMA Land Use Plan. And whereas Richard M. Reed put forth substantial effort to improve the quality of life of Kitty Hawk citizens. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Town Council of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, that Richard M. Reed is officially commended for his valuable service to the town of Kitty Hawk the second day of December 2013, signed by Gary L. Perry. Thank you, Richard. Yeah. We have one more certificate of appreciation. This is an appreciation certificate in recognition of his invaluable service to the Government Education Access Channel Committee. Let me take this opportunity to tell you that tonight we're high def. We have about $30-some thousand worth of technical equipment that gives us for the first time the ability to put on that screen for television viewers what we, the council, see and the audience sees here. We've not had that before. So in addition to being able to stand here and hopefully hear what we're saying back there, we have audio, visual that we've never had before, and Richard and Melody together worked with this committee to get a grant, so it didn't cost you anything. Thank you, Richard. Now you can leave. All right, the next one up is Mr. Perry. Sounded like an echo. Come on up, Lefty. You got so many awards, I don't have. All right. First thing we're going to do, Kitty Hawk doesn't give gold watches. But what we do have instead are 2 pieces of wood. They're beautiful pieces of wood with a gavel, and the plate is gavel banged on too, and they're beautifully involved. So take these home with you and remember a time. Next, we have a state of North Carolina. And Governor Pat McCrory, in reposing special confidence in the integrity, learning, and zeal of the Honorable Clifton G. Perry, I do by these presents confer the Order of the Long Leaf Pine and the rank of Ambassador Extraordinary, privileged to enjoy fully all rights granted to members of this exalted order, among which is the special privilege to propose the following. North Carolina Trust Toast in select company anywhere in the free world. Here's to the land of the longleaf pine, the summer land where the sun doth shine, where the weak grow strong and the strong grow great. Here's to down home, the old North State. Signed by Governor Pat McCrory, December 2, 2013. Now, before before I read this resolution, I understand, Warren, you would like to speak some words? I'd be great. Please?
Mayor, it's my pleasure to be here tonight. As a resident in this wonderful town of Kitty Hawk, in Dare County, and in my service the last 13 years on the Board of Commissioners, we have had a great man sitting in that seat, folks. He has represented Kitty Hawk well, very well. His guidance and his wisdom at our monthly mayor meetings was beyond compare. I thank you for that, the conversations we've had over the years. But I've served with a lot of people over the last 13 years, and when you figure we have 6 towns and 6 town councils in the county government, I can't think of anybody who has been true to his oath of office and to his people, but also to the global picture of Dare County, more than you have, Cliff. You're a dear friend, and I appreciate your public service. Go well into your retirement. He becomes a senior statesman now, so you guys can go by and visit, and without agenda, you can learn from the wisdom that Clifton's had over these 26 years. Thank you. For the privilege, Mayor. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Now, this next award is a resolution of appreciation from the town of Kitty Hawk. When I sat down to try to think how best to present this award, it occurred to me that one of the things that every person who runs for office is asked at some time or another is, what are you going to do for my town? Well, I sat down and made up a list. Now, this is not all of them, but it's a highlight. So, some of the things that were accomplished during Clifton's presence on council are Woods Road multipath, Twyford Road multipath. Now, that terminates at the graveyard, so a person can literally, but safely, walk to your grave. North Shore multipath, Dominion's Children's Playground, Sandy Run Park. It's a place you can see snakes sunning in a tree, feed frozen peas to the turtles, or catch a fish. Kitty Hawk Park, dogs running free, community garden, and kids on skateboards. How they keep their head above their hind, I don't know. My vertical would be upsy daisy. Windgrass Circle Park, a quiet, peaceful place with the bay swimming hole of generations of Kitty Hawkers remaining available to future generations of yet unborn. Bob Perry Road, boat ramp with a park and a recycle center. Lillian Street beach access with handicap capabilities. Bathhouse beach access with restroom facilities. Bird Street beach access and large associated parking lot. A new town hall, a new police station, a new fire station, the Coastal Reserve, the Monument to Flight, that's a history lesson in 360 degrees. A new post office, a Walmart for the average folks, a Harris Teeter for the upscale crowd. A Home Depot, that's my alternate home. A Garden Inn to class up the town. A Holiday Express, which is all us old sailors could afford when we were on temporary additional duty assignment. And more banks than we can count. The old folks of this community will remember when you had to go to Elizabeth City or Manio to be fleeced. Now you don't have to leave town.
Some of that may not be good.
All right, a resolution of appreciation. Whereas Clifton G. Perry has given a lifetime of service to his country, the state of North Carolina, the Outer Banks community, and the town of Kitty Hawk. And whereas during the last 48 years, his dedicated service includes 22 years in the Coast Guard, 1955 to 1977, 26 years on the Kitty Hawk Town Council, 1987 to present, 20 years as mayor of the town and the first popularly elected in 2005. Kitty Hawk Woods Coastal Reserve Local Advisory Committee, 1999 to present. Kitty Hawk Planning Board member, 1986 to 1987. Participation in a leadership role in state initiative, including the Environment, Transportation, Coastal Reserve, and Land Use, 1987 to present. Board member of the League of Municipalities, 1995 to 1997. 36-year member and church elder of Liberty Christian Fellowship, 1977 to present. 36-year member of the American Legion, 1977 to present. And whereas our exceptional mayor retires today after 26 years of dedicated service to his beloved hometown of Kitty Hawk, now therefore be it resolved, the Kitty Hawk Town Council, citizens, and staff commend and thank him for his many years of hard work, wise counsel, and unfailing devotion to the town of Kitty Hawk. Signed this day, 2nd December 2013, Gary Lee Perry, Mayor. Mayor has done a lot for us, but there's one person missing. And that person, for every sailor that's ever gone to sea, every military person that's left family and gone to do their duty, knowing that person is home and somebody to come home to, tending the family, raising kids, those sort of things, with Miss Norma, you and her, please. Which was worse, when he went off and left you, or when he was here fighting the town? Yeah, that's right. Certificate of Appreciation, Norma Perry. Whereas Norma Perry, wife of Mayor Clifton G. Perry, has loved and supported her husband throughout their married life of 59 years, and whereas she has graciously shared her husband with the town of Kitty Hawk during his 26 years of service on the Kitty Hawk Town Council, and whereas Norma Perry has served as Mrs. Mayor of Kitty Hawk for 20 years, and whereas she has earned our enduring gratitude for her smile, kindness, and caring ways, her remembrance and willingness to share her stories of bygone days in Kitty Hawk, her personal sacrifice of the mayor's time and support whenever Kitty Hawk has needed him, and her love for our town and its people. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Town Council of Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, that Norma Perry is lovingly and officially commended for her devotion and service to the town of Kitty Hawk, the 2nd day of December, 2013. Gary Perry, Mayor. And now, before we have a break, I want to wish Mayor Perry a fair season and fair wind into your retirement. Thank you for your service. You want to speak? Come on. I thought you said enough before.
I did. said too much before, but I'm leaving. Gary Perry has been mayor pro tem, and he would do a fine job for Kitty Hawk. And the two young men, Greg Garris and Jeff Pruitt, have been on the planning board for the last couple of years, and they have learned a lot, and they would do a great job for Kitty Hawk. We have a great council, two people that are still staying, and together they will do a great job for Kitty Hawk. So I feel good about leaving. And I thank the people of Kitty Hawk for supporting me for all these years. I know I've made a lot of mistakes. Maybe we've done some good things, but I appreciate it. One thing that Emily alluded to was wisdom. And I'm going to tell you that I have no wisdom. But in James, when we go back to the Bible, in James, he says, if you lack wisdom, if you will ask me for wisdom, I will give it to you. And I have asked, believing. And he has given me the wisdom that I have. And I have to give him thanks for that.
Take a break, man. We'll reconvene. And first, we have remarks from new council members. Jeff, do you have any remarks?
I do. First of all, I'd like to express my thanks to my good friend Clifton Perry, and also my thanks to Richard Reed. It's because of both of you that your decisions over the years of your service that we remain one of the top vacation areas, destinations for people to come, and for the rest of us, it's the greatest place we could ever ask to live in. And I thank you for your service very much. I'd also like to thank my mother, who's in the audience, and my father. My father died in 2003. He was a councilman here in the town from 1981 until 2001. My mom was a town employee for the town of Kitty Hawk for 15 years at the same time that my father was on the council. So with both of them being involved in the town, they taught me what it was like to give to the town that gave so much to them. My parents loved Kitty Hawk. We all knew it. And they wanted to give back to the town. And I thank y'all for that, Mom. I wish my dad was here to thank him personally. I'd also like to thank my wife and my daughter, Taylor, my son, Perry, that's not here, for giving me the green light to do this. I had to ask them first. Thanks to Lynn, who believed in me, Lynn McLean. When I went and asked her if she would help me on this venture, she said, sure, I'd be glad to. It meant a lot to me, great encouragement for me to keep moving forward. And last, I just want to thank all the people who showed up on Election Day. I look forward to working for you. And I urge you to be active in the issues that we have coming up. We need to know how you feel. Please attend the upcoming public hearings that we're going to have on issues, but because if you don't show up, we don't know how the people feel, and we are here for you. We work for you, and please come and let us know how you feel. And once again, I'd just like to thank all the Kitty Hawkers for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. And since you came from a family that was involved the way it was, then you know Norma and Cliff had a little bit of talk too.
I was trying to figure out a right word. Discussion maybe would have been a good word for what we had around the kitchen table a lot.
Greg, would you care for some remarks?
Yes, I would, thank you. To say it's an honor to be sitting here is just wonderful to be sitting here. I too would like to thank Mayor Perry, I've known you for a long time since I've been here. You've been wonderful. You've done everything possible that you could for the town of Kitty Hawk. I have served the public for most of my adult life, and it's a good feeling to be sitting here to continue serving the public, the citizens of Kitty Hawk. Jeff and I have a lot in common. His dad was councilman. My father was also excuse me, councilman for 12 years in my hometown of Conway, North Carolina. So I guess we're following in our dad's footsteps here. It's in our blood. My family and I moved here in January of 1996. We met with a realtor who took us all over Dare County looking for somewhere to live. I chose to live in Kitty Hawk, and I haven't regretted it for 1 minute. It's a wonderful place. I'm going to do my best to do what's right for the citizens of Kitty Hawk. If I don't, I'm sure somebody's going to let me know, and that's what I expect you to do. But again, it's an honor. I'm excited to be here sitting with this group of people, and thank you all for coming out tonight. Thank you very much.
All right, we'll finish up. I do have some short remarks, and then we'll go into public comment. Folks, I sit here in the shadow of a legend. I do so with the specific purpose of providing continuity to a council that will transition to new faces over the next few years. With that in mind, I want to speak to the generation of younger citizens that come after me. You're busy with work, you're raising families, and a multitude of other endeavors. But equally important is the impact of this local government on your daily life. If you want to have some control of how this community evolves, it is fast approaching your turn to step up and help govern this community. I urge you to engage in boards, committees, and public meetings. Learn what is required to represent this community and stand for elected office if you can. Local government is the one place your voice carries the most weight. It can also be the one place where lack of interest can harm you the most. With the hope and belief that this council will represent the community with wisdom, respect, and transparency, I now open the meeting for public comment. Lynn, do we have any public comment?
We have people signed up, and I want them to know they can either speak at this public comment or the one at the end. So I'll call your name, and if you'd like to talk now, that's fine, or if you'd like to wait, that's fine also. The first person is Jesse Hines. Yes, here, please.
My name is Jesse Hines, and I just want to say congratulations to Mr. Pruitt,
Thank you.
Mr. Garris, and of course, Mr. Perry. And I live on Kitty Hawk Road, and I am commenting on a piece of land that's going to be, they're proposing tonight to put 30 homes on a 22-acre plot, which is not an acre, huge. But anyway, it's going to completely change. We're all talking about the village. We all know how special this place is, and they're calling it West Village. Even though it's going to give it a cute name, I don't think it's going to be a cute change for our town. And Mayor Perry, he lived right across the street from there, and it's just going to affect this small road that we have. And more than that, it's really like the opportunity to live in Kitty Hawk and to really call it a village and be able to leave the beach and the tourism, and be able to go somewhere special. It's going to turn into, I'm sorry if you live in Kettle Hills, but it's going to turn into something like that. And we have something so special here. So I encourage y'all to really take a look at what they're planning on doing. I know they're going to make it cutesy and all that, because Gordon's a smart man, but it's going to, it's going to dramatically affect our lifestyle. We live right behind it, and there's a house that basically looks like it's going to be built on a canal, which is our little creek, and so I'm really sad that it's potentially going to happen, and I encourage y'all to really take a look at it and think about all the cars, the traffic, the dogs, and everything else that it's going to, not dogs, but it's going to bring a lot more people here. And so I encourage you to really think about what they're doing. And my suggestion is, why 30 homes? I know why, because it's, we're trying to make money. Money talks, but can we think about what it's going to do and how it's going to impact our community before we think about money? And I think all y'all who live here in Kitty Hawk, I hope you feel the same way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Forbes?
Good evening. I live on Corinda Lane, and this property is right beside me, the one that he was referring to. I feel it's a complete misuse of the property. If one had to build on it, maybe it should be 10 rather than 30 houses. There's 7 on Corinda Lane and 7 on the street on the other side. And I feel that 30 is just simply outlandish. Another possibility for that property, Austin Cemetery, in the 16 years I've been here, has filled up twice what it used to be. I think possibly that property could be taken over by the town and used as an extension for Austin Cemetery. So I realize somebody has to make money somewhere, but most 40% of that property is wetlands, and we're going to lose the white herons and the blue herons and the hawks that are controlling the pests that would otherwise be running into our houses. But it also is going to increase the flood potential quite considerably, because the realtor wants to block off some of the wetland to put the road through. And if that's done, then the Corinda Lane canal is not going to be draining properly through to the other canal. There's no drain at the far end of our lane for that water to go into the state canal, which takes a turn round there. So I just see it as a potential complete disaster for Kitty Hawk.
Thank you.
Joanne Ike? Good evening. My name's Joanne Ike. I live on Kitty Hawk Road as well, down the Little Dirt Road. When we had the last hurricane, there was approximately 3 feet of water down that whole entire road. Now, most of Kitty Hawk had a lot of water everywhere, and I just feel that the impact of such a large subdivision, 30 homes, which will go way back into the wetlands back there, and I feel like by just all that disruption, the water's not going to flow like it normally is. And, it was very unusual during that hurricane, but there were a lot of people affected by that hurricane, and they're still reeling from that. I feel that you're really disrupting the wildlife there, and I'm more concerned about my neighbors having to deal with other issues with 30 homes. 30 homes is a lot, and I really cannot see how on that amount of wetlands that's in there that they are not going to fill. Now, I realize that some of the rules around Kitty Hawk allow a certain amount of fill. There isn't even any real issue about that. I think a lot of these laws need to be looked at a little closer, a little tighter.
Thank you.
That's all we have signed up.
Does anyone else wish to speak at this portion of the public hearing? Let the record show no one else came forward. All right, next item is consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we approve consent agenda.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right. I have no items to move, so now we're in the public hearing. And this is a text amendment. Joe, would you come up and give us some input onto this?
Well, thank you, Mayor Perry, members of council, and members of the audience in attendance. What you have before you this evening is a proposed text amendment that would really do 2 things. First of all, would create definitions for the terms call centers and workstations. It would also establish call centers as permitted uses in our VC1, VC2, VC3, VC2, and VC3 zoning districts. and set parking standards for call centers. Let me give you a little bit of background for folks who may not be familiar with how this proposal came about. Recently, the Planning and Inspections Department, with input from our town council and town manager, made an interpretation to define a small call center. In this case, they had proposed 15 employees. I think the actual amount they began with was 9. To establish that call center as an office use and permit the establishment of that in the Quail Run Business Center. At the time, the staff noted that while a small call center is very consistent with an office use, on a larger scale, that it could become problematic. The main issue being that this type of business has very small workstations for their employees, and they can fit a lot more employees into a space than a typical office use can. So with that, it was suggested that staff take a look at establishing some kind of standard for larger call centers. As the planning board took a look at this over a couple months, they reviewed this proposal. The board, in doing its consideration, really had 3 main items of discussion. The first of which is, should call centers be a use of right, where it's just permitted administratively if it's allowed, or as a conditional use that would require them to come before the planning board and town council. After discussion, the board did decide to recommend that call center, because of its consistency as a relatively low-intensity office use, be considered as a use of right, and therefore they've recommended this use in the districts I outlined earlier. The second issue is, should the town differentiate between small and large call centers? And after some discussion and input from town attorney, the board decided to consider recommending consideration of all call centers equally, whether they're small or large, and just treat them all in a consistent manner, rather than attempting to pull a number out of a hat and just say everything above this line is large and this is small. So to treat them all consistently. And third, and maybe the one that generated the most discussion, had to do with what should the minimum parking requirements be for call centers. In the staff report that was prepared for the planning board and for the town council, staff has outlined a number of different standards from communities, many of which throughout the country, just giving you an idea of some different ways you could look at those standards. After reviewing all of those standards and thinking about how it might apply here in Kitty Hawk, the planning board did recommend a standard that you find outlined in the proposed ordinance, and that's on the second page of the draft ordinance, where the standard would be, the minimum standard would be 1 parking space for each workstation, plus 1 parking space per 500 square feet of gross floor space. The intent behind that from the board's standpoint is that each workstation would have 1 employee, and even though in a call station, if it's really up and running full, might have multiple shifts and run throughout the night even, there wouldn't be any more than 1 employee at the workstation the way it's defined. And then the additional spaces would accommodate visitors, other people, coming at management or things like that who might come and visit the site. So at their meeting on October 17th, the planning board voted unanimously to recommend approval of the attached text amendment to add call centers as permitted uses in the districts mentioned earlier, and to establish those minimum parking standards for that type of use. I'd certainly be glad to answer any questions that the council members might have.
Well, we need to go into public hearing.
Motion to go into public hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're now in public hearing. Lynn, has anyone signed up for this particular?
No, sir, no one is signed.
Does anyone wish to speak to this text amendment? Let the record show no one came forward. Does council need to ask, before we go out of public hearing, Joe, any question? Do you have anything?
I just have one,
Go ahead.
and that is the one parking space per workstation. How does enforcement of something like that work? It's just kind of honor system. Once they say they're going to have 15 workstations, they have 15, and that's what you give them for parking, right? I understand the
It's
square.
possible. That was actually one of the factors, really one of the key considerations that the planning board members had at the time. There was a lot of discussion about a one per employee standard. And in consulting with the town attorney, the board members ended up finding that the workstation approach was actually more enforceable than a employee approach, because employees can come and go, and you'd almost have to, if you get a complaint and you're looking at enforcing this, you'd almost have to show up at different times, all over. But you can go in and you can walk in and count workstations. And you can say there's a setup, and so it was just felt by the planning board and reflected in their recommendation that was actually an easier way to enforce it as opposed to employees. You are correct that someone could add stations in, but it's also easier to count that if someone does attempt to do that.
Well, the only other option would be like square footage, where you kind of account for how many workstations would actually could be allowed, and base it on that. But I'm satisfied with it. I think that they came up with a good mix here with the workstations and the square footage for the extras. That's.
Any other questions for Joe? All right, we'll call for going out of public hearing.
I make a motion, we leave public hearing.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now we're in deliberation. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve, deny, or have any discussion?
I'll make a motion for it, and I'd just like to add that I really liked the way the planning board came up with this simplified approach on this. No messing with conditional uses and making it a use of right, and I think that's kind of what we like. Okay. I move to adopt the proposed text amendment permitting call centers in the BC1, BC2, BC3, VC2, and VC3 zoning districts and establishing appropriate parking standards. Town Council finds that the proposed text amendment is consistent with the adopted CAMA land use plan and finds this amendment to be in the public interest by allowing a compatible use in these commercial zoning districts.
Is there a second? Second. And before I call for the vote, is there any further discussion? Well, I do have one piece of discussion, and that is one of the things I learned while serving on the Tourist Bureau and that I've heard in county meetings and other places is an attempt to diversify our economy. Our tourist-based economy needs some other anchor besides just that. I don't know if a call center does that, but it's a small step in the right direction, I suppose. And so maybe this will give us a little bit of that and encourage some other things to go along with it. So if no one else has a comment, then I'll call for the vote, or I'll call for approve. Vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. All right, next up is planning. We have on the agenda a preliminary subdivision plat. And I would like to state, Joe, before you start on this, because we did have some comment at public comment, there are rules that we have to follow. the established rules that permit certain things to happen without a public hearing at certain stages. A public hearing can eventually occur if something follows through with other procedures. We're not at that stage yet. So at this point, council is being asked to approve or deny a preliminary plat, and then it goes into some other rulemaking and work. So with that, please, Joe, tell the audience what we're dealing with.
Thank you again, Mayor Perry, members of council. We have up on the screen for you tonight, and I'll use a pointer to point out some of the features of this proposal as we move forward, but let me just start with a few general comments. First of all, as the mayor mentioned, the applicant tonight has submitted an application and a preliminary plat for the West Village subdivision. This plat outlines a proposal to re-subdivide 4 existing lots totaling over 22 acres into 30 lots. As part of the proposal, there would be a new road connecting to Kitty Hawk Road, as well as water line, underground electrical lines as part of the subdivision improvements. As part of the materials that the council received, there was an application and materials from the applicant. You also should have attached to the staff report a letter and analysis from the town's consulting engineer on this project, Joe Anloff, and also information, Dr. Forbes, who spoke a little bit earlier this evening, had submitted some materials that we were able to, that was timely for us to put in the packet as well. So I believe you have a copy of her comments, a little more detail than what she was able to offer this evening. With that, let me move to the drawing itself. The plat itself, just due to the length of it, extends over 2 sheets of paper, so I may have to flip back and forth a little bit. Please pardon me if I need to do that to reference anything. And I'll just try to cover everything briefly and then certainly be glad to answer any questions that the board members have on this project. First of all, the subdivision name, West Village, as well as the road name, West Village Road. Both of these names proposed were reviewed by town staff and Dare County E911 to check on, particularly for similarity with other names so that there's no confusion in emergency circumstances. Both of the proposed names were deemed acceptable. Zoning of the properties. This properties are zoned Village Residential 1, which is mainly a single-family residential district. The VR1 district would allow the density that's proposed under this project for single-family residences. In fact, the minimum lot size in that district is 15,000 square feet, which is about 1/3 of an acre. And under the proposal, with the 30 parcels, they do range from just a little bit over that figure to a little over 2 acres in size for the largest lot. So all of the lots proposed do comply with that minimum lot size standard. One of the factors we take a hard look at when we're looking at that lot size has to do with wetlands. Now up here on the plat, and it's probably not easy to see here, but we do have areas here that you can see that have some kind of hatching sort of marks on it running through this property. Those are all wetlands. In fact, 42% of this property is wetlands of one form or another. The property itself is mainly a ridge that kind of runs through here with wetlands. It falls down to wetlands on each side. There is a canal even on each side of the property, running down on the east side and the west side of the property. You can see with the layout of the lot, this is the proposed road running through here. And the layout of the road really follows a lot of that highland so that the applicants would not have to to look at damaging or having to fill many areas of the wetlands. So the only areas proposed to be filled are, there's a few little darker areas here, and as you go along, there's another area toward the rear of the subdivision where they are submitting an application to the Army Corps of Engineers to fill those areas, and they total half an acre in size, the areas that are proposed to be filled, mainly to accommodate the development of the road through the property. So the fill would not be, it doesn't extend onto the properties themselves, but it's in the area of the right-of-way of the road. And looking at the wetlands, one of the key components is that from the town standpoint, we do count all wetlands that are Army Corps of Engineers wetlands toward the lot size. That's how our subdivision ordinance defines that. However, we exclude all wetlands that are what are called coastal wetlands under the Coastal Area Management Act. The applicants in this case have done wetland delineations for both of those things. There are some areas on the, particularly on the western side here, where the canal that runs along the western side of the property actually extends onto some of these properties in this area here. And there are some minor wetlands associated with that canal. And the State Division of Coastal Management has declared those to be coastal wetlands. So those areas have been subtracted from the lot size calculations. So in other words, the figures that you see before you as far as the size of those lots have already excluded those coastal wetlands per our ordinance. So all of those lots comply with the lot size, even with those excluded. I did also want to point out that there's lot area, they're all along the west side of the property where those coastal wetlands are. It encompasses most of the properties going down that side. Looking at some other aspects of the development, the town has standards for road frontage, that each lot along a cul-de-sac have at least 25 feet road frontage. Each lot on other circumstances has at least 50. All of the proposed lots comply with these standards. That segues right into looking at the width of lots. In the town standards, we do have a minimum width of 75 feet for lots. So not all of the lots are 75 feet at the frontage of the road. However, all of them do widen to that distance at least that width and have an area that's an appropriate building area where that setback complies. The things I do want to point out on here, there are a number of lots that I want to just be sure the council's aware of these. Lot 12, 20, 21, 22, and 24 that do not meet that 75-foot requirement at the street front, but widen out. So we have 5 lots out of the subdivision where you can see how the lots increase in size as it goes back, increase in width. And so you can see the building area of those lots, whereas a typical lot setback, minimum setback would be 25 feet and would be up this close to the road. For those lots, the minimum front setback does not begin until those lots achieve that 75-foot width. So for those lots, it actually pushes back the building area into this area toward a little bit more toward the rear of the lots. That is a type of layout that the planning board and council have considered before on other subdivisions. In looking at the building setbacks, all of the standard setbacks are shown correctly on the plat. The one item I did want to point out that's a little bit different is that on lot number 1, up here to the west of the proposed road, it's a larger lot. But that particular lot, the front setback is being shown along Kitty Hawk Road rather than the new road. All of the others, the front setback would be off of the new proposed road. In this instance, it's off of Kitty Hawk Road. Because of the location of the main high ground on that lot, the applicant is proposing that that lot access Kitty Hawk Road directly as opposed to coming in off of the new road. Road rights-of-way. Although this proposed subdivision meets the standards as a local residential subdivision street, which has a requirement of only a 30-foot right-of-way, the applicant has proposed to develop this subdivision to a higher standard consistent with that of a collector secondary road. And under that standard, the proposed right-of-way is 50 feet, and the applicant has provided easements of 5 feet on each side outside of that 50-foot. That would be dedicated for road maintenance. In addition, looking at toward the rear of the development with the cul-de-sac, the standard the town has for a cul-de-sac is a diameter of at least 100 feet. As shown on the plat, that cul-de-sac right-of-way has a diameter of 102 feet. There is an existing 60-foot right-of-way. You can see a dashed line here, and that extends up to all the way up to the front of the property. There was an existing 60-foot right-of-way that ran over the west side of this property, a vast majority of which is located in wetlands. The applicants are proposing to abandon that right-of-way as part of this project. Looking at the width of the road, again, the applicants are they've proposed to build the road to that higher standard, where it would have a pavement width of 20 feet and 3-foot wide shoulders on the sides of that road. And the cul-de-sac, they are proposing in the North Carolina Fire Prevention Code is a standard for a 96-foot diameter cul-de-sac, and the applicants have proposed to construct it to that standard. One of the main items for the council to consider this evening is taking a look at the road and its design. The main thing is it's really on this first page that I've got up before you. You can see as the road comes in, it's fairly straight coming in off of Kitty Hawk Road, and then it makes a bend, and this follows a contour of a very high portion of the ridge in this area. The road follows the contour of that ridge down around and then continues forward. Relatively speaking, it's a fairly tight curve in that area, and what the applicants have done is to propose that road that be permitted, and what they're asking is that curve and the other aspects of that road design be consistent with what's called a mountainous or hilly terrain with a 20-mile-an-hour design speed. With a slower design speed, it allows someone to make a tighter curve than it would if someone is traveling faster. The other alternative that the town's ordinance presents is for a 25-mile-an-hour design speed for rolling terrain. There are areas of this property that do meet the criteria for a hilly or mountainous terrain. There are areas of this property where it meets the rolling terrain. So that will be a decision that the council will need to make. If you agree with the proposed layout, that's really all you would need to consider. If you do want to look at that further, we do have the applicant's engineer as well as the town's engineer present here this evening, if you would like to go into that in a little more detail. The applicants would also be installing, as part of the project, if it's approved and they move forward with it, an 8-inch water line that would come in off of Dare County's 6-inch water line at Kitty Hawk Road. So they would actually be installing a larger line. than what the county has presently. There would be 5 new fire hydrants located in this subdivision, spaced out approximately 400 feet apart throughout the subdivision road as it goes down. Regarding the septic, each of these lots is large enough to at least potentially accommodate a septic system. However, each of those systems would be, the property owner of the individual parcel would apply for and obtain a septic permit from the Dare County Environmental Health Department, and that's how that process would work at that time. The planning board did spend some time and had some discussion with the applicant's engineer about the buildability of these lots. The council was provided with a drawing, a sketch plan that was done by the applicant's engineer that did show at least a potential layout for houses with a 40 by 40 footprint, as well as potential locations of septic tanks, septic systems on those lots. So it is the belief of the board and staff that these lots would all be at least potentially buildable. The applicants are proposing to install underground electric lines as part of the improvements. And as far as stormwater goes, they would have to apply for a low-density stormwater permit from the North Carolina Division of Energy, Mineral, and Land Resources. When issued, that permit would likely reduce the amount of lot coverage that would be permitted on some or all of the lots being proposed. Just to point out a couple other odds and ends here as far as easements related to this development. I had mentioned the 5 foot on either side of the road, but did want to point out that on each individual parcel, to accommodate the installation, potential installation and maintenance of utility lines, there is a 15-foot wide easement where they abut the road, and a 5-foot wide easement on each property down the sidelines. In addition, there is an access easement that runs across the road all the way, the property all the way at the back, lot 19. As part of the contractual agreement to purchase this property, the applicant is required to provide access to an adjoining parcel, a single parcel located behind this property that is in the family that's selling the property to the developer. And under that, they would have to provide an easement. They're proposing a 20-foot easement. The significance of that in working with staff is that a 20-foot easement is not wide enough to allow for any further subdivision of that parcel behind it. So it would allow the access per the contract, but it would not allow the owner of the property to the south here to take that parcel located behind this development and subdivide it into additional parcels. Okay? So that's the significance of a 20-foot easement as opposed to a 30-foot where they would at least potentially be able to do that. Final thing I wanted to point out is over here on lot 18. There is an existing bridge that crosses over the canal in this area. The applicants are proposing to preserve the right of people to continue to use that crossing. So there is an easement highlighted in dashed lines that encompasses that bridge, a little bit of area around it, and then extends 10 feet in width down the northern property line of lot 18 all the way to the road, so that people would be able to come from the other side there, from Corenda Lane, cross the canal, walk over to the new road, and then be able to walk down the new road to get where they're going. As I mentioned, you do have comments from the town's engineering consultant who is present this evening. And we also do have the applicant's engineer present this evening who can answer other detailed questions about that. I did want to close by outlining the planning board's recommendation. At their meeting on November the 14th, the planning board voted unanimously to recommend approval of the preliminary plat for the West Village subdivision with the following conditions, and for the record, I will read through these. First condition, to update the legend of the plat with symbols and descriptions for bends and Ts, gate valves, and any other waterline symbols shown on the plat. Number 2, to clearly state the right-of-way dimensions of the cul-de-sac. Number 3, the easement granting access to the adjoining property to the south needs to be referenced by a note on the plat. Number 4, the width of the pedestrian access on Lot 18, pedestrian access easement on Lot 18, needs to be defined on the plat and added under easements in the notes on the plat. Those are the first 4. All of those have been addressed in the copy of the plat you have before you tonight. Okay. So the applicant did go back and submit a revised plat addressing those 4 conditions. Conditions go on. A geotechnical report must be prepared by a qualified company as part of the final design for the base course and road. A copy of the final road design submitted to the Planning and Inspections Department for review and approval prior to grading or construction of the road improvements. Another, an erosion and sediment control permit must be obtained from the town of Kitty Hawk prior to clearing, grading activities, or installation of any improvements. Another, the applicant must obtain a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers for approximately half an acre of fill in the wetland areas designated on the preliminary plat and submit a copy to the Planning and Inspections Department prior to the issuance of an erosion and sediment control permit or any filling activity. Another, a copy of the stormwater permit from the North Carolina Division of Energy, Mineral, and Land Resources must be provided to the Planning and Inspections Department prior to the installation of any improvements. Another, the Dare County Water Department and North Carolina Division of Public Water Supply must grant approval of the plans and specifications for the water lines. A copy of such approval must be submitted to the Planning and Inspections Department prior to installation. All necessary paperwork must be submitted and recorded to properly abandon the existing lot lines and right-of-way. A limb height of 13 feet 6 inches must be maintained over the proposed roadway. And finally, that addresses must be assigned to all properties. So with those conditions, the board did recommend approval of this preliminary plat to the town council. And just for the benefit of those here this evening, a preliminary plat is basically approval of the design for the subdivision, and it basically authorizes the applicant to go ahead. As you heard in those conditions, there are certainly a great number of other steps that the applicant would need to take toward installation of all these improvements. What the council would be looking at tonight is approval of the design of this subdivision, and then the applicant would go back, get all those necessary permits, and install all of the improvements being proposed this evening, if it is approved by the council. At that point, the applicant would come back in with a final plat, and that would need to be approved by the council before the applicant could actually go out and begin selling lots. And that's all I have for you this evening, Mr. Mayor.
But for the record, once the preliminary design is approved here and he puts all that work into it, at that point, the council is being asked to approve the work that's been done to all the design that we would approve here tonight and the permits allow. Is that a correct statement?
That is correct, yeah. But basically, the council would be documenting that all of the improvements were installed per the standards that you will consider approving at tonight's meeting.
Right. So once we get to this point, he's put all the money into it, he does it right, there's really not much choice for council but to accept it.
That's correct.
All right, I just wanted to make sure that was clear for the record and everybody understood that. All right, this is a lot. I know two of our members have been through this pretty thorough, and I appreciate that. This is the first time I've seen it. How about you, Irvin?
First time I've seen it.
And
And I've got some,
I got some questions.
yeah.
I got a lot of questions too, so why don't we start there, and before we do any trying to approve or deny. So, who do you want to start with?
Ladies first.
All right, one of the first things I just want to get clear in my mind is, at this point, with the revisions that they have made, and with the conditions, and if the conditions are part of any kind of an approval of this preliminary plat, is everything consistent with the code, with all of the rules for subdivisions at this point, for this preliminary plat?
Yes, and really the only standard that the council, as I mentioned, regarding which of the road speed design
limit.
standards, as far as the mountainous, hilly, or the rolling terrain, which you want to consider it under. That would really be the only standard
thing
that appears to be in question.
Okay. All right. I have a question about one of the comments that was made by the town engineer. And I'll read the part that I'm asking about. It says, as additional lot-specific information is collected and processed by the design engineer and lot development plans undergo revisions, the locations of these, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, sloughs, S-L-O-U-G-H-S, what is it? Sloughs, okay, may become important as they relate to the ultimate and final configuration of the proposed wastewater systems. Now, knowing as little as I do about, engineering and even the terminology, I kind of interpret that as all of these septic systems are going to be approved one lot at a time. And what I see as a concern here, or at least I interpreted it as a concern by the engineer, that those individual approvals could in effect have a subdivision-wide effect on the efficacy of the septic systems, unless some records are kept about terrain or whatever. Is that correct? Am I interpreting that comment?
I don't think that was the intent. Again, Mr. Enloff is here, and with the mayor's permission, I'd be glad for him to speak to it directly.
I would like to ask him, because to me, that was the one comment that he didn't seem to feel had been addressed. And what I really want to know is, what is the concern, and what can be done at this stage to resolve it?
Good evening, Town Council, Mayor. My name is Joe Anloff with Anloff Engineering, and I prepared review comments specific to this project. There was a geological report, or a hydrogeological report, prepared by a licensed soil scientist named Kevin Carver. And in that report, he identified a number of features that were of concern. Low depression areas that were not necessarily classified as wetlands, but would have a high season high water table condition, where the water table is close to the surface. Or he identified other areas of sloughs, which would be a drainage feature that could be in an upland area. This particular property is an undulating topography. It's a high sandy ridge, like much of Kitty Hawk Village. And there may be some small drainage features where an upland area drains water down towards the wetlands, sort of like a swale in that upland area. And he identified those areas as sloughs and indicated that those areas may be unsuitable for on-site wastewater systems. So what I wanted to have reflected in the record, I thought was important, was that on this plat, those sloughs be identified, so that as a matter of record keeping, when individual site plans are brought before the planning staff for the location of the home, the driveway improvements, and the on-site wastewater system, that there's a record of those locations of those sloughs, and that's not, because it's not reflected on this plat, that fact, it'd be really easy to put some fill in there, and make them go away.
I see.
But
And
just-
So it
just
would
to keep-
affect the drainage then?
Well,
is what you're
if
saying.
the area is unsuitable for an on-site wastewater system, as determined by a licensed soil scientist, then we want to keep a running record of that. As they develop these lots, and they try to fit the house footprint with the driveway, the number of parking spaces required per the number of bedrooms, and then they try to fit an on-site wastewater system there. What we don't want is that on-site wastewater system to be located where these depressions or sloughs that the soil scientists identified as areas that were unsuitable or potentially unsuitable for on-site wastewater system.
So what you're saying is that perhaps we need to add another condition in here that talks about documenting those on?
Well, I think Kevin Carver, again, is a licensed soil scientist, which is a certification recognized by the state. He's prepared a report, and that report has been provided to staff, and that should be in your packets, or at least to be presented to the planning board members. That documents the existence of the depressions and sloughs. Again, I think there needs to be a record of that kept.
Okay, so is that sufficient for the record that you think is necessary?
In my opinion, it would be, the easiest way to keep a record would be to show those locations on the plat.
On the plat. All right, so is that a condition that we,
Well, certainly it can be considered.
yeah,
Knock it down and let's
okay,
get
so
some other
that's-
questions out of the way.
all right, that was one question. The other is based on something that Joe said about the easement on Lot 19. He said it was important that it was a 20-foot easement in that a pedestrian easement, and that it would prevent any further development as another subdivision on the adjacent lot. Is that correct?
That is correct.
On the plat, it says a minimum 20-foot wide access easement shall be provided across Lot 19, a minimum. So if the intent is to make that easement the reason why the adjacent property can't be developed, if that's the intent, then I think that wording should be changed to a maximum 20-foot wide easement. Was that not the intent for?
That's certainly part of the intent on why
To
that,
prevent future development?
yeah, as far as why that width was selected, that was one of the factors considered.
One of the factors. But if the width, if the language here says it's minimum, and if it were wider, then development could take place, correct?
If it was at least 30 feet wide, then at least potentially someone could use that to develop a road within that easement that would go back to the other lot. And it is not our understanding that that is either that's neither the intent of the easement in the contract, nor would that be consistent with some of the other aspects of this subdivision to add additional lots in almost another phase, if you will.
Yeah.
There would be other factors that the town would consider if there was to be a second phase to this development, particularly as it relates to the North Carolina Fire Prevention Code.
So that's something we also should
Correct.
consider for a change or a condition or
Well,
whatever.
What you're
Whatever.
saying is it needs to have a minimum and a maximum.
Well-
Minimum of 20 feet wide plus no more than
Then 20 feet
20
wide.
feet wide is what you're
Yeah,
saying.
yes. But what I'm saying, what I was concerned about was it could go bigger than 20, and that sounded
Right.
like it was a problem. Okay, and the only other thing I have to say is I think 20 miles per hour for, a road through this kind of a residential neighborhood and a curve that, like it is shown on this plat, makes more sense than 25 miles an hour. And that's all I have.
Joe, you mentioned the stormwater management, they had to apply for that plan. And did I hear you correctly in saying that that might make some of the lots not buildable?
No, that was not the intent of my comment. As you may be aware, in having reviewed some plats, for particularly some of our more recent subdivisions that undergo that state review, particularly Hickory Ridge or First Flight Run, there are, when the state reviews that, basically they take out the area, they have, the easiest way is to think of it this way, you have a 30% lot coverage for that entire property. They're building a road through the middle of that. That's using up some of that 30%. It might be 3% or 4%. What the applicant then has to do, and they would do this as part, the engineers would do this as part of their proposal to the state, would be to basically set aside areas within the lots themselves where the lot coverage would actually be reduced to less than the 30% that the town typically requires. And that can be done across the board. In First Flight Ridge, every lot in that subdivision, they divided it evenly, and it's about 3.3%. So every lot in First Flight Ridge can only build 26.7% lot coverage, as opposed to the 30% that the rest of the town can build. In Hickory Ridge, the developers in that project chose to divide up that different. They had a few larger lots where they actually limited those to as little as, there's like 15, 17% coverage, but they were large lots. And they were able to do that and still have a very appropriate area for building. And they will have that will be a choice of the applicant on how to address that, but that's how that would work. Okay, so it wouldn't prevent them from developing any or make any lot unbuildable, but it would set aside some areas to accommodate that greater, the lesser lot coverage that will be permitted with that permit.
And the planning board, and we have two members here that were on the board at the time, they're thinking of the 13-foot height. Is that to accommodate for fire trucks, emergency services and so forth? And
That is a fire department requirement, yeah. So that came from them. The board didn't specifically, it was recommended to them to consider that condition from the fire department.
And so with the rolling road, there wouldn't be an issue of having access to any lot on there?
The limbs would have to, if it was an issue, the limbs would be trimmed up to accommodate that. That's the way that would work.
This is really an intense development, in my opinion, by looking at it. It's like we're putting a lot on a lot of piece of property. That's the reason I'm asking this question. The 20 mile per hour, I would go along with that, the 20.
You would?
Yeah.
How did the police department respond to the 20 mile per hour and trying to enforce something like that? We have, you look at other places in Kitty Hawk where we have problems with a higher speed limit and people complaining. And here we're adding a sharp curve to boot. And did the police department have any input in that?
Well, Mayor Perry, what's being proposed isn't a recommendation for a speed limit. Although that is something that the town could logically follow with. The recommendation is that they be able to design the road to that speed. So I do think it would be something that the council would certainly want to follow up with should this development move forward and consider a speed limit consistent with the design of the road. But the subdivision itself, we're really only dealing with the design of the road, and we're not dealing with a speed limit or anything like that at this point.
So if we said no to the hilly, and I guess you have to use a flatland criteria at that point, what would it do to what's proposed in front of us today?
Basically, there may be some changes in, slope, cut and fill slopes and things like that as it bends. But basically, what would be required is it would flatten out this curve. So instead of looping way around and following the contour of that high point of the ridge, the developers would have to look at other alternatives that could include a case where it goes straight up and over the ridge. It could be something where it just flattens out, but they would have to take a look at how that impacts the lots, as far as what they're proposing, if it reduces the number of buildable lots or things like that. So they would have to look at that issue and come back with a different design for that stretch of the road.
Can I, oh, I'm sorry. I was just
Okay,
gonna-
just one more now, I'll turn you loose. Going back to Irvin's talking about limb heights and having to trim them out and that sort of thing. Again, I get into, you're right, this is dense. And we've had problems, we have problems on Ride Lane where our public works has to go in and cut back bushes. Is that what's going to be expected of town resources in the future on this private road? Will this be a private road in the beginning?
The developer can also speak to that. It's my understanding from their statements at a prior meeting, it would initially be a private road, but it is being developed in a manner consistent with their being able to turn it over and make it a public road at some point in the future, should they desire. But to answer your question, it would work like any other, certainly like any other road in Kitty Hawk, if it was a public road, as far as the town keeping limbs trimmed up, just like we do on the Woods Road and many other roads as well.
You have another- oh,
Yeah, no, it was me. The only other question I have is, I know when you're just driving on roads, there are roads that just post a speed limit on a curve. Does this have to be, the whole road has to be designed to 25 mile per hour or 20 mile per hour? Or can there be a piece of it, if the curve can't work, the way it is without the whole road going 20 miles an hour? I just don't know if that's possible to do on something like this.
Well, it's my understanding that the rest of the road would comply with the,
20.
at a 25 mile an hour design speed.
So just the curved area could be at the lower speed?
Yep. If the council could certainly consider, if there was a
Consider that
posting a
as an
speed
option.
limit on it, you could certainly consider doing that, as we do for other roads. There are areas of stretches of road that are more, curvy than others where that's appropriate.
Well, I don't really think that a road like this, if this is what winds up getting developed, a road like this should remain private. Because look at what has happened with Ride Lane and all of the problems that are associated with that. And the other thing is, I've understood that if you do any kind of, if the town does any kind of maintenance on a private road, and I don't know if that includes cutting tree limbs, that they take on some responsibility for maintenance.
Town attorney can probably speak better to that than I could.
Well, I remember something that was talked about there with that.
Right. If it's a private road, you don't have any obligation
To do anything.
But it's going to be built.
But it becomes
will be built to the standard with the understanding that eventually it will become a town road. At that point, yes.
Yes,
do.
we would take it out.
And the thing that bothers me about that sharp curve is that, you're trucking along at 25 and people don't know to slow down if there's nothing there to really tell them to do that. All right. You got any more?
That's about it.
I do want to mention for the record that there are some of those lots that would have what they call innovative septic systems, not your standard drain field. These would be the P or whatever they come up with now. So some of these would be what they call innovative, and those would be in the areas that he spoke to
that probably had questionable geology. Council, what do you want to do? Do you want to think on this a little bit, or you want to try to do something tonight?
I got a question. Can I talk to the developer? What's going on, Gordon? I'm just asking, just talking.
Yes.
Is there a plan B with less intense? And I'm just asking this. I know you guys done a lot of work, and you do a great project, so I'm not going there. But this is really intense, in my opinion. Is there a plan B that comes back with 20 lots that are less intense, that would be larger and?
We have not looked at 20 lots. The current price on the property would not work for 20 lots. I feel like we've met or exceeded all of the town requirements as is, or as this is presented. Does that answer your question?
My question, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you have met, like I said, but I still have to say it, and to me, in my opinion, it's intense for the thing. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
No, except that I think that if we do something, that we should probably write in something about the easement and,
I guess the first question then, because I know you two have already kind of fleshed it out, but we haven't. Do we need to think on this a little bit longer and take it up at the next meeting, or are you ready to do your thing tonight?
well, I feel like it satisfies the requirements.
All right?
That's.
You know, you can't, I don't think that we can do anything other than, add a couple of conditions, talk to the speed, development standard for the road. It's not like they have not, they have crossed the Ts and dotted the Is, and it's not fair to the applicant to delay if there's nothing that can't actually be resolved tonight.
All right. You want to make a motion and add
Well, I don't
those
know,
conditions to it?
yeah, I'll try to make the motion, but the two conditions that we would have to address would be the road,
Mhm.
and, let me get this so that I can at least start with the recommended, motion, and see if I can add in what we need to say. I move approval of the preliminary plat for the West Village subdivision that divides 4 existing parcels off of West Kitty Hawk Road into 30 lots, subject to the listed conditions recommended by the planning board, and with the additional conditions regarding the width of the easement that progresses through Lot 19 to indicate a maximum as well as a minimum, and provide for some documentation for, was it the sloughs?
Location on the plan.
Yes, I've learned now how to pronounce something I never heard of before. And provide that documentation on the plat. Was that what those 2 conditions, I think, were all that we came up with?
I think Emily meant to include 20 feet as the minimum and maximum as well, correct?
Correct, 20 feet, which was already there as 20-foot maximum, minimum,
And you're
yes,
adding
and adding a
minimum and-
20-foot
It's going to
maximum.
have to be 20-foot problem.
Right.
All right.
I don't believe there were any other things that we would have to add.
Well, there are things that we would like to see different, but
Yes,
it's not going to
but
happen.
you just can't do that.
All right, do we hear a second? Second. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Looks like it's passed, folks. Ah. That was a lot to digest, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, next thing is put out a call for public hearing for a zoning amendment. This is for application to rezone all or portions of 7 parcels associated with Shoreside Center. And it's to clarify and correct some official zoning maps. So, someone would like to make a motion to call for that public hearing, please?
Mr. Mayor, I move to set a public hearing regarding the proposed zoning amendments at the Shoreside Center, 5400, 5406, 5416, 5424, 5430, and 5440 North Croatan Highway for the Town Council meeting on January 6, 2014.
I second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, the next one is a call also for public hearing, text amendment. And basically, it's an application to amend subsection 360, standards for allowing pier length to be measured from the furthest water point of normal high water mark. Do I hear a motion to call for public hearing?
I'll make a motion, call for public hearing, text amendment, application to amend subsection 42, 360C2D with standards allow pier lengths to measure from the furthest waterward point of the normal high water mark of any property. At the public hearing, request to be scheduled for the January 6, 2014 Town Council meeting.
Second.
All right, before I call for the vote, there's a couple of things I want council members to look at closely on this because it deals with the length of the pier from an existing landmark and whether or not the wording into the actual ordinance that's being proposed is strong enough to ensure that it affects only the lot that is being considered and other lots further down or up the shoreline cannot be at some point used to make the piers even further out. So if you'll pull over to that amendment section, I want to bring to your attention the section D where it talks about maximum length of all piers. And if you read through that to where it says waterward point of the normal high water mark, consider adding some words as measured. And of the bay or sound adjoining the property, consider whether the wording needs to be stronger to ensure that we're dealing with only the individual lot and not an adjoining lot that could be adjoining that particular property. And with that said, for your consideration, we'll take it up when we get back to the public hearing. So all in favor of calling for the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. We're done with that. Now we have some new business. We have to elect some officials and board committees. So we have a nomination, oath of office for Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have a nomination for Mayor Pro Tem?
I move to nominate Irvin Bateman as Mayor Pro Tem for a 2-year term.
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Looks like you got it, Irvin.
Thank you. It was a hard-fought election.
I got one. Yes, sir.
That's all right, he's gonna hold on. I do swear that I will well and truly execute the duties of Mayor Pro Tem for the town of Kitty Hawk according to the best of my skill and authority, according to the law, so help me God. I do solemnly swear that I will support and maintain the Constitution and laws of the United States and the Constitution and laws of North Carolina, not inconsistent therewith, and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of Mayor Pro Tem for the town of Kitty Hawk, so help me God. Thank you. Very good.
All right. Next up, we have to have a candidate, because Richard left us, for the Dare County Government Access Channel Committee. Do I hear a nomination to that?
Mr. Mayor, I nominate Greg Garris.
I'll second.
All right. Do we have any other nominations?
Is it for a 2 or 4 year? It says
Yeah,
indicate 2 or 4 year.
that's a good point. How many years?
I don't know.
Well, ask the victim how long
volunteer
he
him for
wants to,
4.
How long you staying?
ask the victim how long he wants to stay on, whatever you say.
4? Okay, 4 years.
Go Craig.
All right. Does the second agree to the amendment?
Yes.
4 years.
Hearing no other nominations, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The nays and none. All right, now we have some board members. Is that right? Yeah. All right, so we need to nominate, well, we got to move some people around on the planning board because they all got elected. Kind of an unusual thing. All right. Do I hear a nomination for, let's see, we have to move up. We have to appoint the planning board member for Greg Garris. Do I hear a nomination to set that one?
Mr. Mayor, I move to appoint John Richardson to the unexpired term of Planning Board regular member Craig Garris, term to expire June 2015.
I'll second.
Any further nominations? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Now we have to nominate somebody to replace Jeff Pruitt on the planning board.
I move to appoint Chuck Heath to the unexpired term of Planning Board regular member Jeff Pruitt, term to expire June 2015.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Now we need a motion to appoint someone to the alternate positions in planning board. Do I hear a motion to appoint someone?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to appoint Brian Parker to the expired term of Planning Board alternate member Chuck Heath, term to expire June 2015.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And now we need one for Mr. John Richardson.
Mr. Mayor, I move to appoint Dylan Tillett to the unexpired term of Planning Board alternate member John Richardson, term to expire June 2014.
Second.
Do I hear another nomination? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. And now we need to move someone into vice chair since Greg is sitting on the council. Do I hear a motion to do that?
Mr. Mayor, I move to nominate Lynn McLean, Vice Chair.
For a term? expires June 2014.
Yes, sir, please.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right. We have a planning board in place. We have council members in place. Ready to do business. Now we need reports or general comments from the town manager.
Mr. Mayor, I have one item for council this evening. On Monday, December 16th, NCDOT will be holding an information meeting for the Dare County Comprehensive Transportation Plan here at the Kitty Hawk Municipal Building from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. The purpose of this meeting will be to answer questions about the CTP and obtain input from the public. The CTP is a plan that addresses the long-term transportation needs of Dare County by identifying existing and future transportation deficiencies. So we will have that information meeting.
I might add to what you just stated, that planning has been ongoing for a very long time,
Yes.
and it affects 158 perhaps greatly. So encourage citizens to come and give some input to it.
Okay.
It's important.
Yes.
Thank you for bringing
All
it.
right. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right, and town attorney,
Don't have anything for you tonight.
nothing?
It's cold over here.
All right.
It's cold.
And now we have comments from town council members. Jeff?
No, I have none.
Craig?
No, thank
Denise?
I'd just like to welcome our new members and one final farewell to Clifton. That's it.
Thank you.
Irvin?
Sam, I'd like to welcome you guys too, and look forward to working with y'all. And Cliff, I'm not gonna say anything about you. I would like to tell that, thanks everybody on the input on the marathon we had. It was a great success. I will tell you this, my fat butt ran the thing, and by the time I got done and came back to Kitty Hawk at about 9:45, the town was cleaned up, Public Works had straightened everything up, and like we never had a race here. And so that's really good. I mean, everybody was outstanding as citizens, and I was proud of everybody, so thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, I would also chime in and thank you for standing up for election, and thank you for being on council. I'm sure we'll all work well together. And thank you good folks for coming out. We appreciate that too. Now we'll go into the final public comment. Does anyone wish to speak at this portion of the meeting? This is public comment.
We talked a great deal about the 20-mile or 25-mile-an-hour on this new road that's going in. We never gave a thought to the road coming out onto West Kitty Hawk Road with an extremely bad corner. When we come out of Clarendon Lane and when the others come out of the Kitty Hawk extension there, we not only look, we put our windows down and we listen to make sure we're not going to get rear-ended coming out. There's been one traffic death this year already, just off my property. I just feel that another 60 cars more coming in and out of that property onto that corner, we're going to be in big trouble. Okay?
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak? Let the record show no one else came forward. Are we ready to adjourn? Yes, sir. Somebody make a motion.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.